So, good morning, Kat. I am so very happy to see you here. Actually,
Oh.
not really here yet, far, far away on Zoom, but coming here to Innisfree Farm and Botanic Garden very soon. And we're thrilled that you're going to come to Vancouver Island. I believe this is your first visit out here, and we're going to make it a special one.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
Kat, we are here today to talk a little bit about the programs that we're going to be running together here at Innisfree this summer so that we can get some of our audience excited about coming to participate with us in these programs. So, we have two programs. Before we talk about them, I just want to introduce you very briefly because
Thank
not
you.
all of our listeners will actually have studied with you or had that privilege yet. So, for those of you that don't know Kat, she is a long-standing clinical herbalist, and before that was a physician's assistant. So, Kat comes at this from the scientific aspect, from clinical herbal practice aspect, and also being a plant person from a much more energetic approach as well. And she skillfully weaves all of those things together in her work. And Kat and I have worked together over many years now. I think it's at
Yeah.
least 30 years, probably, Kat, when you first came down to the herb farm in Virginia where I was working, and we started teaching together. And I think it was about coming up on 30 years.
Absolutely, Chanchal. Yeah, we can say that with great pride.
Yeah. And so, with that said, we have been really excited putting this program together because it's allowing Kat to really showcase some of the things that she's been learning that go so far beyond the regular classroom context. So, Kat, I want to talk a little bit about first our advanced clinical practicum. So we're coming in on this one, July 31st, August 1st and 2nd, so 3 days. And what we're intending is for this to be an advanced program that is for senior students, intermediate and senior students, and for practitioners, both practitioners that might be newly setting out and want a little bit more grounding and skill sets, but also the practitioners that have been around for a while and need a refresh, need a reframing of their approach to herbal medicine and their approach to the plants specifically. So, can I ask you a little bit, Kat, about this program because you're going to be taking a lead on the advanced clinical practicum. So, one of the things I'd like to know is what are people going to gain from this 3 day intensive that they wouldn't get in another place of learning? What is it that you're offering that's going to be so unique for them?
Yeah, thanks, Chanchal. Yeah, I think in the creation of this, one, they're going to receive the two of us. And while we both have clinical practices, there are different styles. And I love that you mentioned that this is also for practitioners who are already out there with their practice, because I've been co-teaching more and more advanced courses because this is so deeply, deeply needed in herbalism. Seems like so many herbalists come up to a certain point and they're reticent to step into a practice or don't have the skills. And so that's why this is so exciting to be doing this with you. And I still am learning from my peers tricks of the trade and different notes and different, how to keep lot numbers and all of that. So essentially, we're going to be spending the days really looking at your practice as that container, how to hold the container, while we'll be looking at lots of practical issues, how to do soap notes, how to keep your notes, how to do apothecary notes, recipe forms. It'll be resource friendly. I mean, why reinvent the wheel with all the different handouts? If I would have started with some really wonderful handouts, it would have been such a great start. So essentially, it's going to be the practical, being safe, looking at waivers, how to protect your property, your family. We don't have the time to do a deep dive and S Corp, C Corp, but we'll touch on all of that just as a big picture. So we'll do the practical. And then also there's a whole morning on, it's not the sacred, but we're looking at the values, that foundation of, why do you want to have a practice? How's your relationship with your community? Not making assumptions about the community. We're all eyes wide open now, and and moving forward with sensitivity. So we're really going to touch on those issues as well, of that inner reflection. And what are some important questions for yourself as you're taking your practice forward?
That's great. Thank you. Yeah. And picking up from what you just said, because although you're taking the lead on our 3-day program, I am co-teaching with you. So because we're working here on my property, I do, of course, have a very full apothecary here. So we will definitely do a tour through the medicine room. We'll certainly be touring in the herbal gardens, because that's the big thing that we do offer here, is teaching gardens. And Kat and I together, I think we probably have, oh my gosh, this makes us sound so old. I think we probably have about like 75
We have to embrace that. We have a multitude of years of experience.
Many years of experience collectively. So,
Yeah.
and our practices are very, very different as
Right.
well. Kat, you have a largely urban practice. And I think you have a more general practice than I do. You see a lot of all sorts of things, right? Whereas
Right.
my practice is not entirely oncology based, but largely oncology based. So I think with those different ways that we approach our practices, I think there's going to be quite an interesting scope for people to see here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Notes and
Absolutely.
records. And yeah, and we are, for our audience listening, we are making up a Google Drive for you all to have access to. So that's where there'll be a resource package, basically a digital resource package that you can then download, as Kat is saying, all kinds of forms and documents that we have found useful in our practices. Really interesting things that herbalists don't really want to have to think about, like inventory controls in a dispensary, and how do you choose your suppliers? And so we're going to get very practical. And even again, for practitioners that have been at it a while, sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And we're always looking for new skills and resources. So I think there's going to be a lot of tips and tricks in here, as well as some very, very deep thinking about why we do this work and what it means in the world.
Yeah.
So with that question in my mind, Kat, why do we do the work, and how does it sort of show up in our lives? Another question I have for you is, of all that we're going to cover in our 3 days of advanced clinical practicum, what's exciting you the most? What's the one piece in there that you're really jazzed to bring forward that you feel like our audience won't be familiar with, and that you're going to be really excited? I'm putting you on the spot because we have
Yes.
in advance. So
No, I love that. And it keeps it authentic, because I have to, well, first of all, I do want to say, Chanchal, to do this deep practitioner work in the garden, that really is, I think, really profound. And it really is really important that we're committing, we're dedicating, we're practitioners, and it's a hustle. We'll really be addressing, how do you do this? How do you take this passion and, bring this to your community as right livelihood? So I think one of the passions is, to sit with you and listen to you, and also for me to share, the mistakes, what worked, what didn't work. It may not be in your business plan course that you're taking. It's sort of on the periphery of real life experience. Well, you can read this and you can Google this and you can do social media, but this is where, for us, you and I personally, this is that impact. So it's taking these years of experience and really coalescing them, and really bringing them down, distilling them down to, people may say that works. It might work for you. So I think that's part of it. The other part is we will be looking at the energetic lens. We can't do a deep dive into energetics, but another way of languaging. I love to say, your dear mentor and our dear friend David Hoffman, I go to his medical herbology book, and you look at his formulas, and while that's kind of British phytotherapy, they are spot on energetic applications. So I love to really help people understand you already have this. The energetics. Let's just tease it out a little bit. Let's language that. When we're in the garden, when we're sipping the tea and maybe doing provings, we embody that. We really, wow, that astringency, that does have an upward direction. Or what do the, downward direction. So, I love the energetics. It's very sensual. We'll be in your amazing garden, and just really having that be one breath is really exciting for me.
Yeah, thank you, Kat. You said a couple of things I want to pick up on there. You talk about practical, and I think this is important to emphasize because we are going to be talking about some theories, and we're going to talk about energetics, which are a little bit more ethereal, but we're going to bring it down into very practical applications. This is what you can take home and do in your work.
Right.
So we're going to take a lot of heady concepts and try to embody them in a format that you can literally take home. And for example, the provings where we taste a herb and feel where it goes in the body and experience the medicine of the plant, not just read about it, not just listen to other people's experiences, but literally embodying that in our own physical state to prove what those herbs are really able to do. And that leads me on then to our second part of our program, Kat, which is our weekend, August 3rd and 4th, where we're going to be studying more of the energetic herbalism. And I will give a shout out right here for Kat's wonderful book. So this is what is prompting a lot of the work right now. Energetic Herbalism by Kat Maier is a wonderful book that is going to be sort of informing some of our work over the whole 5-day program, but I think especially our weekend session, which is a little bit less of the clinical practical and a little bit more of the feeling the herbs and proving the herbs. So can you talk a little bit, Kat, about what you see for the participants on our weekend program, which is wide open to everybody at every skill set and every level of interest? So for those people coming just for the weekend, can you tell us sort of a take home from that? When you finished your weekend study here in energetic herbalism, you will be able to do what, to understand what about the plants?
Yeah. Well, hopefully you'll be going home realizing that you have so much more wisdom than you realized, because what the energetics, a lot of people think, well, energetic is more ethereal or spiritual, but energetics is it hot? Is it cold? Is it damp? Is it dry? And so when you're sitting in front of a very complex case and you are trying to find common ground, you go back to your basics. Well, gosh, they run hot. That gives me this amount of information. So that is deeply, deeply practical. In the weekend, what we'll really be doing is exploring the elements. And, so many more people are looking at Ayurveda, and we're working with doshas, and we will be talking about constitutions. And it's more of a self-reflection because it's not practitioner. We want you to enjoy it. We want self-knowledge. And so we will go through, well, what is your constitution? More not in a therapeutic, but more self-exploratory. Because for me, what I love is beyond the words, it's the elements. So we might say, well, vata, but that's air and ether. And so what I really want to do is I want to get into those elements as versus the language and the traditions, and think about air and contemplate air. And that's movement, and that's creativity, that's anxiety. What do these elements really mean? Instead of just kind of getting hung up on the language of that, and to realize that, wow, Western energetics, the garden, we can watch weather. If we see wind, wind dries the landscape. So wind dries our internal landscape. So this is a much more, it's all sensual, be it clinical, be it, this 2-day weekend. But I really want folks to leave with the intimacy. We are nature, and how to begin to understand their processes, their clients, their families, even if these aren't practitioners, how to begin to look at friends and family and self with a deeper understanding of who am I and where's water, where's fire in my body. And it's brilliant. And then you can follow the seasons, then it goes into the whole wider world. And I think we begin with stardust and fractals. So the cosmology will be very enchanting and entrancing. Yeah.
I'm so excited. I can't tell you. I've been waiting to study some of this with you for many years. Before you'd even written your book, we would talk about these things like, I want to get inside Kat's head.
Oh, thank you.
One of the other things we're going to do on the weekend, which I'm going to be leading a little bit more, is the Goethean approach to plant medicine. So Goethe, of course, was a German poet philosopher a couple of hundred years ago, and he developed this 7-step process for studying nature, which we are going to apply in the garden with plants. And it's very relevant to what we do in our clinical practices, because what Goethe did was create a system of studying nature. Of course, humans are part of nature, so it's also a system of studying humans, whereby you look with the subjective lens and the objective lens. And so the Goethean model, which we're going to explore and create a stepwise sequence for literally applying in our own work, in our own world when we go home from the weekend, we're going to literally be looking at the most subjective, absolutely subjective experience of a plant. And then we're going to take it all the way out to the most detailed science that we can actually manage to find. So in clinical practice, that I find is a very useful skill set, because we are trained in our sort of medical practices to be very objective and very, measuring and counting and quantifiable and tangible. But we're reading our patients all the time. We are doing energetic assessments. Even when you meet Mrs. Smith in the waiting room and you see that she's frail and fragile and has a hard time getting up out of the chair, and when she shakes your hand, it's really weak and shaky, you've already determined a great deal about her health and well-being and constitution before you've even really actually got her name. And so we're doing all of this subtle subjective assessment without actually naming it or acknowledging it or validating it. And so one of the things I'm excited about our energetic herbalism weekend is to empower people to work with that subjective skill set and that intuition that we have, that we push away. And, oh, that's not very scientific, or they didn't teach me that in school, so I shouldn't be doing it. And I'm really excited to bring that forward and have people be a little bit more, I guess, trusting in their own intuitive process and their own ability to read a person, actually. So I think that's going to be and to read a herb, of course.
No, absolutely. And I really believe we're wired. I think our endocrine systems, they say we're only working with a certain fraction of our brain. Same thing with our endocrine systems. I really feel that we are much more sensate beings, and we are already doing it. Children do it until they learn that they can't do it. And so it is that childlike, but to really take that information when you soap note subjective, what are you sensing, what is their story, and their story is that energy that they bring. And with Goethe, just so brilliant, such a deep, profound teacher, that even just the introduction to his work is such a huge value. So yeah, and then you never kind of go back. You're always when you want to, reading and feeling and sensing and, proving, just as we're going to taste the teas, you're going to be proving, boy, that shrub feels like this or that tree. And it's that intimacy.
Yeah.
It's really that intimacy and that connection that you do so beautifully through how you're going to present this study.
Yeah. So we are running out of time on our chat today. We've covered a fair amount of ground. I'm very excited. I'm just going to wrap up with a couple of comments for people that are interested. So again, the advanced clinical practicum is July 31st, August 1st and 2nd. And that is going to give just a little over 20 hours, about 22 hours of actual class time. And there will be, of course, a certificate at the end of that, a certificate of completion. There's no exams, so nobody has to worry about that. But there will be a certificate of completion, which then you can use for your continuing education credits in your different professional associations. We will also be giving a certificate for the weekend on energetic herbalism for folks that want that. Again, certificate of completion. We have scheduled a spacious day or days. We have given a nice long lunch break so people can take time to integrate some of the learning, to enjoy the gardens, to maybe have a rest. My spiritual teacher always said that we need to sleep after receiving a learning or a lesson so that we can take it on board properly. There is a lunch provided as part of the registration package. There is a camping option for the people that want that. And of course, one of the great advantages of coming to these in-person programs, first of all, aren't we lucky to be able to do it in person again? We will be mostly outside, weather permitting. So anyone who's concerned about proximity to others, there will be lots of fresh air around. The weather should be very nice, and we have an outdoor classroom. And one of the things that I've learned from running these herb camps over the years with bringing different teachers in is the incredible value of meeting your colleagues and peers and building out your circle of connection. So when people come to these programs, we do get very intimate. We do share a lot, and we build up a circle of trust that we then can carry forward into the rest of our life. So for example, last year we had David Winston here, and that group of students have met with David every month since last summer to talk about cases. Yeah. And beautiful. David is doing that of his own volition. He's logging into the Zoom call, and that group of students have had the privilege of 12 months of tutorials with David, and it's co-teaching. Everybody pitches in. It's not him lecturing. Right. People bring a case and talk about it, and everyone shares their best ideas, but David is in that conversation. So those are I'm not promising that to anybody this time.
I know that's a hard act to follow. Maybe
it's a hard act to follow.
We'll join the course that,
it illustrates how the connections get formed and how then we support each other doing our work forward into the future, because it is sometimes a bit lonely out there. You're doing, slightly unusual work in the world, and it's nice to know you're not alone. So one of the things we'll be doing is building a community of like-minded folks. So I'm going to end here with just giving my website for anybody that wants to follow up again on this. My website, my name, chanchalcabrera.com, and then just follow the links to register for this. I believe Kat has it probably on her site as well by now. If she doesn't, she should. And so I'm going to close out here and let Kat just give any last closing comments. And if you would like to give your website as well, Kat.
Sure. Yeah, I'm very, very excited. I hope whoever's listening, I hope we have a really wonderful gathering, because that's the energy, all those that come together. Really, it's a co-creative process. But more than anything, I just see so many herbalists, putting years and years and years, and they don't step into that practice. And so as we see this planet, moving into these times, we are deeply, deeply needed. We have remedies that, I was trained as an allopath. I love allopathy. I might be the first to refer clients to that. So we have all these different ways, But for herbalists to be in your community, this is such a fabulous opportunity to gain those skills, that confidence. You may hear something that it's like, oh, that was the missing piece, or this is that website that can give me that kind of information, or those business skills, whatever that may be. But this is really Chanchal and mine offering to the herb community of, let's really support practitioners as well as graduates, really step into their communities and feel comfortable. And, it's like Terrence McKenna said, if you're holding 5 milligrams of a certain plant and you're not nervous, you're not in the right space. We should be nervous stepping into clinical practice. That means you're alive, you're alert, you're taking this with the honor and the respect. So let's work with that nervousness, if you will, and say, okay, here are the skills, here are the tools, and to really support you in that. And I love the idea of meeting. So that's really fabulous. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kat. I have one last closing comment. A number of years ago, I was on a panel and I was asked the question by an audience member. It was a group of students. They said, how will I know when I know enough? And my answer was, the day you think you know enough is the day you should stop practicing and retire, because we never know enough and there's always more to learn. So it doesn't really matter where you are in your herbal journey. Between our 3-day advanced program and our 2-day energetic herbalism program, there's definitely room for everybody to gain immense and invaluable knowledge here. And I think we're going to leave it at that. Thank you all for listening.
Yeah, thank you, Chanchal.
Hey everyone, this is Mason with HerbRally. Thanks so much for watching today's video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and also go ahead and subscribe. We come out with new herbal content each and every week. If you didn't know, HerbRally also lists herbalism events. We list herbalism events chronologically. We list them also by state. So you could just go ahead and search by Oregon or Wisconsin or wherever you live. You can find out what herbalism events are happening in your neck of the woods. We also list herbalism events, virtual herbal events. So if you can't make it to an in-person conference or plant walk, we list lots of virtual events as well. To find out more, you could go to herbrally.com/events or herbrally.com/virtual. But if you can help it, I would highly recommend trying to go to an herbalism conference. Those are some of the best learning experiences I've ever had, and that's where you can find different herbal teachers, and then maybe you could perhaps take their apprenticeship. But yeah, just do what you can. Get out there and learn about the herbs, like yarrow, dandelion, corn, all the above, like all the medicinal herbs. And we'll see you out there. Hope to see you at an herb conference. All right, bye.